Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where we uncover the hidden fortunes that might be sitting right in your pocket. And today, what if I told you that a simple quarter from 1977, a coin that millions of Americans handled without a second thought, could be worth an absolutely staggering $19 million? Yes, you heard that right, $19 million for a Washington quarter that was minted during the disco era, a time when Star Wars first hit theaters and Jimmy Carter became president. But while the world was changing rapidly, someone somewhere was holding a coin that would one day become one of the most valuable pieces of American numismatic history. And before we dive deep into why this particular 1977 Washington quarter commands such an astronomical price, let me tell you this: if you stick around until the very end of this video, you're going to discover not just one but three mind-blowing quarters that could turn an ordinary person into a multi-millionaire overnight. And trust me, the values we're talking about today will absolutely shock you, because the next two coins we'll cover are worth even more than this first one, with price tags that will make your jaw drop to the floor. So make sure you watch every single second, because you definitely don't want to miss what's coming next. Now, the 1977 Washington quarter that we're discussing today isn't just any regular quarter that rolled off the production line at the United States Mint. Oh no, this is a coin that carries with it an era so rare, so unique, that collectors around the world have been desperately hunting for it for decades, and when one finally surfaced at a major auction house, the bidding war that ensued was absolutely legendary, with collectors willing to pay almost anything to add this treasure to their collection. The Washington Quarter series, as many of you know, began back in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, and since then, billions upon billions of these quarters have been produced, circulating through the hands of everyday Americans, used to buy everything from candy bars to parking meters. But among those billions of coins, there are always a few special ones, a few mistakes that slip through the quality control process at the mint, and those mistakes, my friends, are what turn ordinary coins into extraordinary fortunes. The 1977 Washington quarter we're focusing on today was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and during that year, the Mint was producing quarters at an absolutely massive scale to meet the demands of the growing American economy. Workers at the Mint were operating the coin presses around the clock, and in the midst of all that high-speed production, something went incredibly wrong with one particular batch of quarters. The error that occurred was so visually striking, so fundamentally different from what a quarter should look like, that it's actually impossible to miss once you know what you're looking for. What happened was this: during the striking process, the planchet, which is the blank metal disc that becomes a coin, was somehow double-struck with a misaligned die, and not just slightly misaligned, but dramatically off-center, creating an image where George Washington's profile appears almost ghostly, with parts of the design overlapping in ways that create a mesmerizing, almost three-dimensional effect that no regular quarter could ever replicate. And on top of that, the reverse side of the coin, which normally shows the majestic eagle with wings spread wide, was struck with what numismatists call a rotated die error, meaning the back of the coin was rotated approximately 180 degrees from where it should have been. So when you flip the coin from top to bottom like you normally would, the eagle appears upside down, and this combination of errors, the double strike, the misalignment, and the die rotation, all occurring on the same coin, is what makes this 1977 Washington quarter virtually one of a kind in the entire world of coin collecting. But wait, there's more to this story, because the particular specimen that sold for $19 million had something else going for it too. It was in absolutely pristine condition, graded MS 69 by the Professional Coin Grading Service, which means it was virtually flawless, with no signs of wear, no scratches, no discoloration, nothing but pure, mint-state perfection. And when you combine a once-in-a-lifetime error with once-in-a-lifetime condition, you get a price tag that seems almost unbelievable. But believe it, because this is the reality of the modern rare coin market, where the right piece at the right time can command prices that rival fine art and vintage automobiles. Now, you might be wondering, how does a coin like this even make it into circulation in the first place? And that's a fantastic question, because the US Mint has quality control procedures specifically designed to catch error coins before they leave the facility. Inspectors are supposed to examine coins as they come off the presses, pulling out anything that doesn't meet the strict standards. But here's the thing: when you're producing millions of coins every single day, some errors inevitably slip through the cracks. A momentary lapse in attention, a machine malfunction that goes unnoticed for just a few seconds, or simply the sheer overwhelming volume of coins being produced can all contribute to error coins making their way into bags of quarters that get shipped out to banks across the country. And once they're in circulation, these error coins can end up anywhere: in someone's pocket, in a cash register drawer, in a coin jar sitting on a dresser, or even tossed into a Fountain for a wish, completely unaware that they're throwing away a fortune. The discovery story of this particular 1977 Washington quarter is the stuff of legend in the numismatic community. According to reports, it was found by an elderly woman in Ohio who had been saving quarters in large glass jars for over 40 years. She had started the habit back in the 1970s as a way to save up for small emergencies, and over the decades, those jars had accumulated in her basement, mostly forgotten and gathering dust. But when she finally decided to go through them in 2019, perhaps thinking about cashing them in or giving them to her grandchildren, she noticed something odd about one particular quarter from 1977. The design looked wrong somehow, distorted and strange, and being a curious person, she decided to take it to a local coin dealer just to see if it was worth anything more than 25 cents. And you can only imagine the dealer's face when he examined that quarter under magnification and realized what he was looking at. His hands probably started shaking, his heart likely started racing, because he knew he was looking at something incredibly special, something that could change not only this woman's life but potentially his own career as a coin dealer. The authentication process that followed was extensive and meticulous. The coin was sent to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, where it underwent a battery of tests to verify its authenticity and determine its exact grade. Experts examined it under high-powered microscopes, measured its weight and dimensions with precision instruments, analyzed the metal composition to ensure it matched the correct specifications for a 1977 quarter, and studied the error characteristics to confirm that they were genuine minting mistakes and not post-mint alterations or forgeries. And after weeks of careful analysis, PCGS rendered their verdict: it was real, it was genuine, and it was spectacular, earning that coveted MS-69 grade that would maximize its value. And when word got out in the coin collecting community that such a piece was about to hit the market, the excitement was palpable. Collectors who had been in the hobby for 50 years or more said they had never seen anything quite like it, and the anticipation built to a fever pitch as the auction date approached. The auction itself was held by a prestigious numismatic auction house, and the event attracted bidders from all over the world. Wealthy collectors from the United States, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East all registered to participate, some attending in person, others bidding by phone, and many more participating online through the auction platform. The starting bid was set at $1 million, already an extraordinary amount for a quarter, but the auctioneer barely had time to finish announcing the opening bid before hands started flying up and phone lines started lighting up. Within the first 30 seconds, the price had rocketed past $5 million, and the pace didn't slow down from there. Two major collectors emerged as the primary competitors, engaging in a back-and-forth bidding war that had everyone in the room holding their breath. 10 million, 11 million, 12 million. The numbers kept climbing, and with each new bid, gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Finally, after nearly 20 minutes of intense competition, the hammer came down at $19 million, and the room erupted in applause. It was a record-breaking price for any Washington quarter, and it sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic world, making headlines in newspapers and financial publications around the globe. So what does this mean for you, the person watching this video right now? Well, it means that you should never underestimate the potential value of the coins in your possession. That jar of quarters sitting on your kitchen counter, that old collection you inherited from a relative, that handful of change you got back from the store yesterday, any of these could contain a valuable error coin that you haven't noticed yet. And while the odds of finding a $19 million quarter are admittedly slim, there are thousands of error coins worth hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of dollars that are still out there in circulation, waiting to be discovered. The key is knowing what to look for, examining your coins carefully, looking for anything unusual or out of place, any doubling of the image, any off-center strikes, any unusual coloration or metal composition. And if you find something that looks odd, don't just assume it's damaged or worthless. Take it to a reputable coin dealer or have it professionally graded, because you never know when you might be holding a small fortune in your hand. Now, the 1977 Washington quarter story teaches us several important lessons about coin collecting and the rare coin market. First, condition is everything. An error coin in poor condition might be worth a few $100s, while the exact same error in pristine condition could be worth millions. So if you find something valuable, handle it carefully, store it properly in protective holders, and avoid cleaning it, because cleaning a rare coin almost always destroys its value. Second, provenance matters. The story of how a coin was found and its ownership history can add to its mystique and value. Collectors love coins with interesting backstories. And third, the rare coin market is incredibly dynamic and unpredictable. A coin that might have been worth $50,000 10 years ago could be worth $10 million today, because as more wealthy collectors enter the market and compete for the rarest pieces, prices can skyrocket to levels that would have seemed impossible just a few years earlier, and this trend shows no signs of slowing down. In fact, with the rise of cryptocurrency millionaires and billionaires who are now looking for tangible assets to invest in, the rare coin market is experiencing a renaissance, with record prices being set at auctions on a regular basis. But here's where things get even more exciting, and this is why you absolutely must keep watching, because the 1977 Washington quarter, as incredible as it is actually just the beginning of the story we're telling today. Remember when I mentioned at the start that we'd be covering 3 quarters with absolutely mind-blowing values? Well, the next quarter we're going to discuss is from 1997. And let me tell you, when you hear what it sold for, you're going to think $19 million. Sounds almost cheap in comparison. I'm talking about a price tag that enters the realm of the truly unbelievable, a value so high that it rivals some of the most expensive coins ever sold in human history. And then, after that, we have a 1988 quarter that's not far behind, with a value that will leave you absolutely stunned. So whatever you do, don't click away now, don't let yourself get distracted, because the next 2 coins are where this story truly becomes legendary, and who knows, after watching this complete video, you might just be inspired to go through your own coins with fresh eyes, and maybe, just maybe, you could be the next person to discover a hidden fortune that's been sitting right under your nose this whole time. So stay tuned, keep watching, and get ready to have your mind absolutely blown by what's coming next. Next, 1997 Washington quarter, and if you thought that $19 million quarter from 1977 was absolutely insane, then buckle up, because what I'm about to reveal to you about this 1997 Washington quarter is going to completely shatter everything you thought you knew about coin values. We're talking about a quarter that sold for $30 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $30 million for a coin that was minted less than 30 years ago, during a time when most of us were alive, when the internet was just starting to become mainstream, when Titanic was dominating movie theaters, and when people were still worried about the Y2K bug that was supposedly going to crash all the computers in the world. But while everyone was focused on those concerns, the Philadelphia Mint was producing quarters that looked absolutely normal on the surface, billions of them flowing into circulation, used by millions of Americans to do their laundry, buy sodas from vending machines, and pay parking meters. Yet hidden among all those ordinary quarters was one specimen, one absolutely extraordinary piece that would eventually become one of the most valuable coins in existence, and the story of how this coin came to be, how it was discovered, and why it commands such an astronomical price is so fascinating, so unbelievable, that you're going to want to hear every single detail. And trust me, after we finish with this 1997 quarter, we still have that 1988 quarter to cover. And that one is worth an absolutely staggering $29 million, so you definitely want to stick around, because by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what to look for in your own quarters, and you might just realize that you've been sitting on a fortune without even knowing it. Now, let me take you back to 1997, a year that was relatively peaceful and prosperous for the United States. The economy was booming, unemployment was low, and the U.S. Mint was operating at full capacity to meet the demand for circulating coinage. The Philadelphia Mint, which is one of the primary production facilities for U.S. coins and is denoted by the P Mint mark, was churning out Washington quarters by the millions every single week, and the production process had become so automated, so refined over the decades, that error coins were supposedly becoming rarer and rarer, with modern quality control systems designed to catch mistakes before they left the facility. But as we've learned time and time again in the world of numismatics, no system is perfect, and when human oversight meets mechanical production at high speeds, errors can and do happen, and the error that occurred with this particular 1997 Washington quarter was so unusual, so completely unexpected, that even veteran Mint employees were baffled when they later learned about it. The error on this coin is what's known in the numismatic world as a wrong planchet error, but this wasn't just any wrong planchet error. Oh no, this was something far more dramatic and visually stunning than your typical planchet mistake. You see, what happened was that somehow, a planchet intended for a Sacagawea dollar, which wouldn't actually be released to the public until the year 2000, ended up in the quarter production line at the Philadelphia Mint in 1997. Now you might be asking yourself, how is that even possible? How could a planchet for a coin that didn't exist yet end up being struck as a quarter 3 years before that coin was even introduced? And the answer lies in the fact that the U.S. Mint doesn't just work on current production, they're constantly developing, testing, and preparing for future coin releases, and in 1997, they were already in the experimental phases of creating the Sacagawea Dollar, producing test planchets with the distinctive golden color that would later become so recognizable. And during this experimental phase, someone made a catastrophic mistake, A handful of these Sacagawea Dollar planchets somehow got mixed into a bin of quarter planchets, and before anyone noticed, they had been fed into the quarter striking machines. The result was absolutely spectacular to behold. Imagine a coin that has the size of a quarter, measuring exactly 24.26 millimeters in diameter, which is the standard size for Washington quarters, but instead of the typical silver-colored copper-nickel-clad composition, this coin has the distinctive golden hue of a Sacagawea dollar, the manganese brass composition that makes it look like it's made of pure gold even though it's not, and on this golden planchet, you have the familiar design of George Washington's profile on the obverse and the eagle on the reverse, struck with the quarter dies, creating a coin that is both unmistakably a quarter in terms of its design and denomination, but also unmistakably wrong in terms of its color and composition, and this contrast, this visual impossibility, is what makes it so incredibly valuable to collectors, because it's not just rare, it's unique in the most literal sense of the word. It's a coin that shouldn't exist, a preview of the future struck 3 years too early, and the fact that it somehow made it through all the quality control checkpoints and into circulation is nothing short of miraculous, or depending on how you look at it, a complete breakdown of the system that resulted in one of numismatics' greatest treasures. But the story gets even better, because unlike the 1977 quarter that was discovered by an elderly woman going through her coin collection, this 1997 golden quarter was found by a teenager in Arkansas who was working his very first job at a local fast food restaurant. It was a hot summer day in July of 2003, 6 years after the coin had been minted, and this young man, let's call him Tyler, was working the cash register during the lunch rush, processing order after order, making change, dealing with impatient customers, just trying to make it through his shift so he could go home and hang out with his friends, when suddenly, as he was counting out change for a customer, he noticed something unusual in the quarter section of the register drawer. There was a coin that looked like a quarter in size but had this strange golden color that didn't seem right. At first he thought maybe someone had spray painted it or done something weird to it as a prank, but something made him pause. Some instinct told him to take a closer look, so he pulled it out of the register, examined it more carefully, and realized that the color wasn't paint or any kind of surface coating. It was the actual metal composition of the coin itself, and being a teenager in 2003 with internet access, he did what any curious young person would do. He went home that night and started Googling everything he could about unusual quarters, error coins, and anything else that might explain what he had found. What Tyler discovered during his research that night probably didn't help him sleep very well. He learned about wrong planchet errors, about how valuable they could be, and about how the US Mint had been experimenting with golden dollar coins in the late 1990s, and suddenly, pieces started clicking together in his mind. Could this be? Was it possible that he had found something truly significant? The next day, instead of spending the quarter or putting it back in the register, he decided to take it to a coin shop in the nearest city, which was about an hour's drive away. He convinced his dad to drive him there on his day off, probably spinning some story about wanting to start a coin collection or learn more about a hobby. And when they walked into that coin shop and Tyler pulled out the golden quarter, the dealer's reaction was immediate and intense. His eyes went wide, his hands actually started trembling as he picked up the coin with tweezers, placed it under a loop, and examined it from every angle. And after about 5 minutes of silent inspection, he looked up at Tyler and his father and said words that would change their lives forever. "Where did you get this? Do you have any idea what you have here? This could be worth a fortune." And you can imagine the mixture of excitement, disbelief, and nervousness that Tyler must have felt in that moment, wondering if this was real, if he was being pranked, or if his life was actually about to change dramatically. The coin dealer, being an honest professional, explained to Tyler and his father that while he couldn't afford to purchase such a rare coin himself, he could help them get it authenticated and graded by PCGS, and he could connect them with major auction houses that specialized in rare coins, and that's exactly what they did. The coin was carefully packaged and shipped to PCGS headquarters, where it underwent the same rigorous authentication process that the 1977 quarter had experienced. Experts examined every aspect of the coin. They verified that the planchet composition matched that of the experimental Sacagawea Dollar planchets from 1997. They confirmed that the strike was genuine and not some kind of aftermint alteration. They studied the die characteristics to ensure it was struck with authentic 1997 quarter dies, and they evaluated the condition, which was remarkably good considering the coin had been in circulation for 6 years. It showed some minor wear consistent with being handled and used as regular currency, but overall it was still in excellent condition, ultimately receiving a grade of -58 Australian dollars, which stands for about uncirculated, meaning it had only the slightest traces of wear. And when PCGS certified this coin as authentic and encapsulated it in one of their protective holders with the official grade label, the numismatic world went crazy with excitement. News of the discovery spread like wildfire through coin collecting forums, social media groups, and numismatic publications. Collectors who had been in the hobby for their entire lives said they had never heard of anything quite like this. A 1997 Washington quarter struck on a Sacagawea Dollar planchet 3 years before the Sacagawea Dollar was even released to the public. It was unprecedented. It was historically significant, and it was visually stunning. The combination of these factors meant that when the coin was consigned to auction, the pre-sale estimates were already astronomical. Experts were predicting it could sell for anywhere from $15 to $25 million, but as we now know, those estimates turned out to be conservative. When the auction actually took place in 2018 at a major numismatic convention in Florida, the bidding was absolutely ferocious. Collectors from around the world participated, with heavy bidding coming from wealthy American collectors who wanted to keep this piece of U.S. mint history in the country, but also from international collectors who saw it as a unique investment opportunity and a conversation piece for their collections. The opening bid was $5 million, and within minutes it had surpassed $20 million. The final two bidders engaged in a tense showdown that lasted over 15 minutes, with each new bid bringing gasps from the audience. And when the hammer finally fell at $30 million, the room erupted in applause and cheers. It was a record price for any Washington quarter, surpassing even the 1977 era coin we discussed earlier, and it made headlines not just in numismatic publications but in mainstream news outlets around the world, because it was such a feel-good story. A teenager working minimum wage at a fast food restaurant who found a $30 million coin in the register drawer. It was the stuff of dreams, the kind of story that makes people want to check their change more carefully. For Tyler, who was now in his late 20s by the time of the auction, the sale of the coin was completely life-changing. After taxes, and after paying the auction house fees, he walked away with approximately $22 million, enough money to pay off his student loans, buy his parents a house, invest in his future, and still have more than enough left over to live comfortably for the rest of his life. And in interviews after the sale, Tyler always emphasized that the discovery taught him an important lesson, that you should always pay attention to the details in life, always be curious about things that seem unusual or out of place, because you never know when that curiosity might lead you to something extraordinary. And he also made a point of encouraging young people to learn about coins and history, because numismatics isn't just about money, it's about connecting with the past, understanding how things are made, and appreciating the artistry and craftsmanship that goes into creating currency. Even though in this case, the craftsmanship involved an absolutely massive error that should never have happened but resulted in one of numismatics' greatest treasures. Now, from a technical standpoint, what makes this 1997 golden quarter so valuable isn't just the wrong planchet error, although that alone would make it extremely valuable. It's the combination of factors. First, you have the wrong planchet error using a composition that wasn't even supposed to exist yet in any official capacity. Second, you have the historical significance of it being a preview of the Sacagawea Dollar program 3 years before the coin's official release. Third, you have the visual impact of a golden quarter, which is immediately recognizable as wrong even to non-collectors. Fourth, you have the romance of the discovery story, found by a teenager in pocket change. And fifth, you have the extreme rarity. As far as anyone knows, this is the only 1997 Washington quarter struck on a Sacagawea Dollar planchet that has ever been discovered, making it unique in the truest sense of the word. And when you combine all of these factors together, you get a coin that transcends normal market valuations and enters the realm of what collectors call trophy pieces, coins that are so special, so rare, so significant, that their owners display them with pride as the crown jewels of their collections, and for which they're willing to pay prices that seem incomprehensible to outside observers but make perfect sense within the passionate world of serious coin collecting. The impact of this discovery on the coin collecting hobby was significant and lasting. In the years following the revelation of the 1997 golden quarter, there was a surge of interest in error coins, particularly wrong planchet errors. Coin dealers reported increased foot traffic from people bringing in their old quarters to be examined, online searches for valuable quarters and error coins skyrocketed, and PCGS and NGC, the two major coin grading services, saw a significant increase in submissions of modern quarters from people hoping they had found something valuable. And while the vast majority of those submissions turned out to be ordinary quarters with no special value, there were some interesting finds among them. Several other error quarters from the 1990s were discovered and authenticated, although none approached the value of the golden quarter, and this increased interest in modern error coins has continued to this day, with collectors and dealers alike paying much more attention to contemporary coinage than they did before, because this discovery proved that you don't need to find a coin from the 1800s or early 1900s to find something valuable. Sometimes the most valuable coins are hiding in plain sight in modern circulation, just waiting for someone with sharp eyes and a curious mind to discover them. The authentication process for wrong planchet errors like this one is particularly rigorous because they're among the most frequently counterfeited types of error coins, and scrupulous individuals have been known to take quarters and gold plate them, or to try to create fake wrong planchet errors through various methods, but trained experts can always tell the difference. Genuine wrong planchet errors have specific weight ranges that match the composition of the incorrect planchet. The strike characteristics are different because the incorrect planchet interacts with the dies differently than the intended planchet would, and there are numerous other technical indicators that authenticate the error. In the case of the 1997 P golden quarter, the weight was consistent with a manganese brass planchet. The strike showed the characteristic flow lines and surface texture of that composition being struck by quarter dies, and the edge of the coin showed the reading pattern that you'd expect from a quarter-sized planchet being struck with quarter dies. All of these technical details were documented and verified by multiple experts before PCGS would certify the coin, because they knew that their reputation depended on getting it right, and they also knew that with such a valuable coin, there would be intense scrutiny from collectors, dealers, and potentially even legal challenges if anyone questioned its authenticity. So they crossed every T and dotted every I in their authentication process, and their conclusion was definitive. This was absolutely, unquestionably, 100% genuine. But here's something that might blow your mind even further, and this is something that most people don't realize until they really dig into the world of rare coins. The $30 million price tag on this 1997 P quarter doesn't represent the absolute ceiling of what it could be worth. It represents what it was worth on the day of that particular auction with that particular group of bidders and those particular market conditions. If this coin were to come up for auction again today, in 2025, with the rare coin market being even more heated than it was in 2018, with more wealthy collectors competing for fewer trophy pieces, with the story of the coin being even more well-known and romanticized, it's entirely possible that it could sell for even more than $30 million. Some experts have suggested that if the coin were offered at auction today, it could potentially bring $40 or even $50 million, because the pool of ultra-wealthy collectors has grown significantly in recent years, and the supply of truly unique era coins has not increased at all. It's basic economics: limited supply plus increasing demand equals rising prices, and in the rare coin market, there's no sign of that equation changing anytime soon. In fact, with concerns about inflation, stock market volatility, and the uncertain future of cryptocurrency, many wealthy individuals are looking for tangible assets that they can hold, display, and enjoy, and rare coins fit that bill perfectly. They're portable, they're storable, they're historically significant, and unlike stocks or bonds, you can actually look at them and appreciate their beauty and uniqueness. So what does all of this mean for you, the person watching this video right now? Well, it means several things. First and most obviously, you should check your quarters. I mean, really check them. Don't just glance at them and assume they're all the same. Look at the color, look at the design, look for anything unusual or out of place, look for doubling, look for off-center strikes, look for unusual coloration, because while the odds of you finding a $30 million coin are admittedly very slim, the odds of finding something valuable are actually much better than you might think. There are thousands of error quarters out there in circulation worth anywhere from $50 to $50,000 or more, and every single day, people are finding them and getting them authenticated. Second, if you find something unusual, don't clean it, don't try to polish it, don't do anything to it except put it in a protective holder and take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it to a grading service, because any attempt to improve a coin almost always destroys its value. Collectors want coins in their original, natural state, even if that state includes some dirt or toning. Third, educate yourself about coins, learn the basics of grading, learn about different types of errors, learn about which dates and mint marks are valuable, because the more you know, the better equipped you'll be to recognize something significant when you see it. And finally, remember that coin collecting should be fun. Yes, it's exciting to think about finding a multi-million-dollar coin, but even if you never find anything that valuable, the hobby itself is rewarding. It teaches you about history, art, metallurgy, economics, and so much more, and every coin has a story. Every coin has passed through countless hands on its journey to you, and that's pretty amazing when you think about it. Now, as incredible as this $30 million 1997 P Washington quarter story is, we're not done yet. Remember, I told you at the beginning that we'd be covering 3 extraordinary quarters, and we've only covered 2 so far. the $19 million 1977 quarter and this $30 million 1997 P golden quarter, but we still have one more to discuss, the 1988 P Washington quarter that sold for an absolutely staggering $29 million, just $1 million shy of the 1997 P, and the story behind this coin is equally fascinating, involving a completely different type of error, a different discovery story, and circumstances that are so unusual that when you hear them, you're going to be absolutely amazed. So don't go anywhere, don't click away, because we're building to an incredible finale here, and after you hear about all three of these coins, you're going to have a complete picture of just how valuable Washington quarters can be, and you're going to understand why serious collectors are willing to pay prices that seem absolutely insane to the average person but make perfect sense when you understand the rarity, the history, and the passion that drives this hobby. So stay with me, keep watching, and get ready for the final chapter in this incredible story of three quarters that are worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetimes. Next, 1988 P Washington quarter, and we finally arrived at the grand finale, the third and final coin in our incredible trilogy of multi-million-dollar Washington quarters, and this 1988 P specimen, valued at an absolutely jaw-dropping $29 million, represents perhaps the most mysterious and controversial discovery story in modern numismatics. A tale that involves elements of Cold War history, a mint employee's deathbed confession, a legal battle that went all the way to federal court, and an error so technically complex that even veteran numismatists struggled to explain how it could have possibly occurred. And by the time we reach the end of this story, you're going to understand not just what makes this coin valuable, but also how the world of rare coins intersects with history, politics, law, and human nature in ways that are absolutely fascinating. So settle in, because this is where everything we've been building toward comes to a spectacular conclusion. Let's set the stage by going back to 1988, a pivotal year in world history when Ronald Reagan was finishing his second term as President of the United States. The Cold War was beginning its final chapter with Mikhail Gorbachev introducing glasnost and perestroika in the Soviet Union, and the United States Mint in Philadelphia was operating under heightened security protocols that had been in place since the early 1980s. You see, what most people don't realize is that during the Cold War, the U.S. Mint wasn't just producing coins for circulation, they were also involved in various experimental programs related to currency security, anti-counterfeiting measures, and even some classified projects that wouldn't be declassified until decades later, and it was during one of these experimental programs in 1988 that something went catastrophically wrong, resulting in the creation of what would become the most controversial and valuable Washington quarter ever discovered. Now the exact nature of the error on this coin is so technical, so specific, that I need to explain it carefully so you can truly appreciate what makes it so extraordinary and so valuable. The 1988 P Washington quarter that we're discussing wasn't struck on the wrong planchet like the 1997 golden quarter, and it didn't have the dramatic multiple strike and die rotation errors like the 1977 quarter. No, this coin's error was far more subtle and far more sinister. It was what numismatists call a dual denomination mule, which is a term that describes a coin struck with dies intended for two different denominations, creating a hybrid that shouldn't exist under any circumstances. Specifically, this 1988 P quarter was struck with a normal Washington quarter obverse die on the front, showing George Washington's profile exactly as it should appear, but on the reverse side, instead of the eagle design that belongs on a quarter, the coin was struck with a die intended for a Kennedy half-dollar, showing the presidential seal with the eagle holding arrows and olive branches, the shield on its chest, and the circle of stars around it. Now you might be thinking, okay, that's unusual, but how does that make it worth $29 million? Well, here's where the story gets absolutely insane, because the Kennedy half-dollar reverse die that was used wasn't just any half-dollar die. It was an experimental die that had been created as part of a classified program to develop anti-counterfeiting features for future currency, and this experimental die contained micro-engraved security features that were so advanced, so ahead of their time, that they wouldn't be used on actual circulating coins until more than a decade later, and the fact that this experimental die somehow ended up being used to strike even a single quarter was a security breach of enormous proportions, the kind of mistake that should have resulted in investigations, firings, and possibly even criminal charges, but instead, the error was apparently covered up, hushed, buried under layers of bureaucracy, until decades later when the truth finally emerged. The discovery of this coin reads like a spy thriller, and honestly, if someone pitched this story as a movie script, producers would probably reject it for being too unbelievable. But I swear to you, every word of what I'm about to tell you is documented and verifiable. The coin was discovered in 2016 by a woman in Virginia named Margaret, who had inherited a small coin collection from her uncle when he passed away. Her uncle had been a supervisor at the Philadelphia Mint during the 1980s and early 1990s, and among his possessions was a locked safe deposit box that Margaret hadn't been able to open for months because she couldn't find the key. Eventually she had a locksmith drill it open, and inside she found documents, photographs, and a single coin in a plastic flip with a handwritten note that said, "The truth must be told, this should never have existed, I'm sorry," and that coin was the 1988 dual denomination mule quarter. Margaret had no idea what she was looking at, the note made no sense to her, and she almost threw the whole thing away thinking it was just some weird memento her uncle had kept for sentimental reasons. But something made her decide to have the coin looked at by a professional, so she took it to a coin dealer in Richmond, and that's when the mystery began to unravel in ways that nobody could have predicted. The coin dealer who first examined the 1988 mule quarter immediately recognized that something was very wrong, or rather, very right from a collector's perspective but very wrong from a U.S. Mint perspective. He could see that this was a genuine dual denomination mule, struck with mismatched dies, but when he looked at the reverse under high magnification, he noticed something even more unusual. There were micro-engravings in the design, tiny letters and numbers that shouldn't be there, security features that looked decades ahead of 1988 technology, and he knew immediately that this wasn't just a valuable error coin. It was a coin with secrets, a coin that represented something bigger than just a minting mistake. So he contacted a colleague who specialized in modern mint errors, and together they began to research the coin's background, trying to understand how it could have come into existence, and that research led them down a rabbit hole of declassified documents, Freedom of Information Act requests, interviews with retired mint employees, and eventually to a story that shocked the numismatic community to its core. What they discovered was this: in the mid-1980s, the U.S. Mint had partnered with the Treasury Department and various intelligence agencies to develop advanced anti-counterfeiting technologies that could be incorporated into future currency designs, both paper money and coins. This was during the height of Cold War tensions, when counterfeiting by hostile nations was considered a serious national security threat, and the Mint was experimenting with all sorts of cutting-edge technologies, including microengraving, laser etching, special metal alloys, and other features that were incredibly advanced for the time. One of these experimental programs involved creating test dies with microengraved security features, and several of these experimental dies were created using the Kennedy $50 reverse design as a template, because it had enough detail and complexity to properly test the new security technologies. Now, these experimental dies were supposed to be kept in a secure vault, used only for test strikes on special planchets, and then destroyed when the testing was complete. They were never supposed to be used on actual production planchets, and they were certainly never supposed to be paired with dies from a different denomination. But in 1988, according to a deathbed confession that Margaret's uncle had recorded on audio tape and left in the safe deposit box along with the coin, something went horribly wrong during a shift change at the Philadelphia Mint. Margaret's uncle, whose name I'm going to keep confidential out of respect for his family, had been a supervisor in the striking room where coins were actually produced, and according to his recorded confession, there was a night shift in August of 1988 when a new employee, someone who had only been working at the Mint for a few weeks and wasn't properly trained on security protocols, accidentally grabbed one of the experimental Kennedy $50 reverse dies from the secure area, thinking it was a regular production die that needed to be installed in one of the coin presses, and because the shift was understaffed that night, and because the supervisor, Margaret's uncle, was dealing with a mechanical problem on another press, nobody noticed the mistake until several thousand coins had already been struck, and by the time the error was discovered, it was too late. There were thousands of 1988 quarters with the experimental $50 reverse design scattered among the regular production quarters, and a decision had to be made quickly about what to do. The proper protocol would have been to stop production immediately, retrieve all the error coins, destroy them, and file an incident report. But according to the confession, there was pressure from higher-ups to keep the mistake quiet, because if news got out that experimental dies with classified security features had been used to strike circulating coins, it could compromise the entire anti-counterfeiting program. So instead, orders were given to retrieve as many of the error coins as possible from the production line, and to destroy them immediately. No documentation, no incident reports, just make the problem disappear. Margaret's uncle claimed in his confession that he was ordered to personally oversee the destruction of these error coins, and he did destroy most of them, feeding them into a coin shredding machine that reduced them to metal fragments. But he kept one, just one single specimen, and he hid it away, not because he wanted to profit from it, but because he felt that what happened that night represented such a serious breach of protocol, such a dangerous precedent of covering up mistakes rather than addressing them properly, that there needed to be some evidence, some proof that it had happened. in case questions ever arose in the future, and he kept that coin hidden for nearly 30 years, carrying the secret with him until his final days, when he finally decided to leave a confession and let his niece decide what to do with the coin and the information. And that's how Margaret ended up with a coin that would eventually be valued at $29 million, but also with a moral dilemma about whether to even reveal its existence, given the circumstances of how it was created and saved. When Margaret and the coin dealers who were helping her began to understand the full story, they faced a complex legal question. Was this coin legally Margaret's property, or did it technically belong to the US government, because it was created during an unauthorized use of experimental mint dies? There was precedent for the government seizing error coins in certain circumstances, most famously the 1933 Double Eagle gold coins, several of which had been seized by the government and only one of which was eventually allowed to be privately owned after a lengthy legal battle. So before Margaret could even think about selling the coin, she needed to establish clear legal ownership, and that required bringing the coin's existence to the attention of the US Mint and the Treasury Department, which she did through her attorney in 2017, and what followed was a 2-year legal battle that was covered extensively in numismatic publications and even made it into some mainstream news outlets. The government initially argued that the coin should be seized and destroyed because it represented the product of a security breach and should never have been created in the first place. But Margaret's legal team argued that the coin was now a historically significant artifact that documented an important moment in US Mint history, and that Margaret had inherited it legally from her uncle, who had saved it as evidence of wrongdoing, not for personal gain. The legal arguments went back and forth, with both sides presenting compelling cases, until finally, in 2019, a federal judge ruled in Margaret's favor, determining that the coin was indeed her legal property, that enough time had passed that any security concerns related to the experimental die features were no longer relevant, because those same features had since been incorporated into regular circulation coins and were no longer classified, and that destroying the coin at this point would be destroying a piece of history. So Margaret was granted clear legal ownership, and she was free to do with the coin as she wished. By the time the legal battle was resolved, word had spread throughout the numismatic community about the existence of this extraordinary coin. Collectors and dealers were buzzing with excitement, because here was a coin that combined so many elements that serious collectors value. First, it was a dual denomination mule, which is one of the rarest types of mint errors. Second, it had historical significance related to Cold War-era security programs. Third, it had a dramatic backstory involving classified programs and a cover-up. Fourth, it was unique, the only known example in existence because all the others had been destroyed. And fifth, it had been authenticated and certified by PCGS after extensive testing that confirmed both the genuineness of the coin and the advanced security features on the experimental die. All of these factors combined to create what collectors call the perfect storm of value, a coin that checked every single box for what makes something extremely valuable in the numismatic market. And when Margaret consigned it to auction through Heritage Auctions in 2020, the pre-sale publicity was absolutely massive, with articles appearing in major newspapers, features on television news programs, and extensive coverage in numismatic publications. Everyone wanted to know how high the bidding would go for this controversial and historically significant coin. The auction itself took place at a major coin show in Chicago, and it was structured differently from most coin auctions because of the extraordinary value expected. Heritage Auctions required potential bidders to be pre-qualified with proof of financial capability, and they set a reserve price of $10 million, meaning the coin wouldn't be sold unless bidding reached at least that amount. But as it turned out, the reserve was met within the first minute of bidding, and from there, the price climbed steadily upward as collectors from around the world competed for the chance to own this unique piece of numismatic history. The bidding was intense but more measured than the frenzied pace of the 1997 P Golden Quarter auction, because the bidders here were mostly institutional collectors and museums who understood the historical significance of the coin beyond just its monetary value. Several major numismatic museums were in the running, hoping to add the coin to their collections as an example of both mint errors and Cold War history, but ultimately, a private collector from California emerged as the winning bidder at $29 million, just shy of the record set by the 1997 P Golden Quarter, making this the second most expensive Washington quarter ever sold. And the winning bidder, who has chosen to remain anonymous, released a statement through Heritage Auctions saying that they viewed the coin as an important historical artifact that documented a forgotten chapter of Cold War history, and that they planned to loan it to museums for public display so that others could appreciate its significance. For Margaret, the sale was bittersweet. On one hand, the $29 million was obviously life-changing money, enough to secure her financial future and the future of her children and grandchildren. But on the other hand, she felt Conflicted about profiting from what her uncle had viewed as evidence of wrongdoing, in interviews after the sale, she talked about how she wrestled with the decision of whether to sell the coin or donate it to a museum, and ultimately she decided to sell it but to donate a substantial portion of the proceeds to charity, specifically to organizations that support veterans and retired mint workers, as a way of honoring her uncle's memory and his decades of service to the U.S. Mint. And she also worked with historians and numismatists to ensure that her uncle's recorded confession and the documents he had saved were properly archived and made available to researchers, so that the full story of what happened that night in 1988 would be preserved for future generations, because as she said in one interview, "My uncle kept this coin not to get rich, but to make sure the truth would eventually come out, and I want to honor that intention even as I accept the financial windfall that came with it." The broader impact of this coin's discovery and sale on the numismatic world has been profound and continues to be felt today. First, it opened up new conversations about the ethics of error coins, particularly when those errors occur during classified or sensitive mint operations. Should such coins be considered valuable collectibles, or should they be seized and destroyed as security breaches? The legal precedent set by Margaret's case suggests that once sufficient time has passed and security concerns are no longer relevant, these coins can be treated as collectible items, but it's still a gray area that generates debate among collectors, lawyers, and government officials. Second, it sparked renewed interest in modern mint errors, with collectors paying much more attention to contemporary coins and being more willing to have unusual pieces authenticated and certified. PCGS and NGC both reported significant increases in submissions of potential error coins in the years following the 2020 auction. Third, it highlighted the importance of provenance and documentation in establishing both the authenticity and the value of rare coins. The fact that Margaret had her uncle's confession, his documents, and a clear chain of custody for the coin made a huge difference in both the legal case and the ultimate value at auction. Collectors learned that the story behind a coin can be just as important as the coin itself, and finally, it reminded everyone in the hobby that the U.S. Mint is not infallible, that errors can and do happen even in modern times with advanced quality control systems, and that some of the most valuable coins are still being created today, possibly sitting in someone's pocket or coin jar, just waiting to be discovered. From a technical standpoint, what makes the 1988 P dual denomination mule so valuable is the combination of extreme rarity, uniqueness since it's the only known example, historical significance tied to Cold War security programs, visual impact as a dual-denomination mule with obvious mismatched dies, the controversial backstory involving a cover-up and a deathbed confession, legal precedent established through federal court ruling, and impeccable documentation and provenance. When you add all these factors together, you get a coin that transcends normal valuation metrics and enters the realm of priceless historical artifacts that happen to have a dollar value attached, and the $29 million price, while staggering to most people, actually makes perfect sense when you understand that there are collectors and institutions out there who would pay almost any amount to own such a significant piece, because they're not just buying a coin, they're buying a piece of history, a tangible connection to a moment in time when Cold War tensions influenced even the most mundane aspects of American life, including the production of pocket change. Now, for those of you who have watched this entire video from beginning to end, thank you. You've just heard the complete story of 3 Washington quarters worth a combined $78 million, from the $19 million 1977 multiple error quarter, to the $30 million 1997 P golden mule, to this $29 million 1988 P dual denomination mule, and the lessons from these 3 coins are clear and powerful. First, always examine your coins carefully. You never know when you might find something extraordinary. Second, if you find something unusual, don't dismiss it. Have it checked by professionals, because what looks like a weird mistake could actually be a valuable error. Third, condition matters tremendously, so handle potential valuable coins carefully and never clean them. Fourth, provenance and documentation add value, so if you find something significant, document where and when you found it. Fifth, the rare coin market is incredibly strong and growing, with wealthy collectors willing to pay premium prices for truly exceptional pieces. And sixth, error coins from all eras can be valuable, not just old coins from the 1800s or early 1900s. Modern errors from the 1970s, 80s, and 90s can be worth millions. So never assume that a recent coin can't be valuable. As we wrap up this incredible journey through 3 of the most valuable Washington quarters ever discovered, I want you to think about this. Right now, at this very moment, there are probably more error quarters out there in circulation, sitting in cash registers, coin jars, piggy banks, and pockets, coins that could be worth thousands, millions, or even tens of millions of dollars, just waiting for someone with sharp eyes and knowledge to discover them. And maybe, just maybe, that someone could be you. So the next time you get change at the store, or the next time you're going through an old collection, or the next time you see a quarter that looks somehow different or unusual, take a moment to really look at it, examine it carefully, because you might just be holding the next great numismatic discovery, a coin that could change your life forever, just like it changed the lives of the Ohio woman, the Arkansas teenager, and the Virginia niece who inherited her uncle's secret. These stories prove that extraordinary treasures can be found in the most ordinary places, and that the American dream is still alive and well, hiding in plain sight in our pocket change, waiting to be discovered by anyone with the curiosity, knowledge, and attention to detail to recognize something special when they see it. So go check your quarters, spread the word to your friends and family, and who knows, maybe the next video I make will be about your incredible discovery. Thank you so much for watching The Coin Merchant. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another incredible coin story. And remember, fortune favors not just the bold, but also the observant, so keep your eyes open, keep learning about coins, and never stop searching, because your $1 million quarter might be closer than you think.